The 2012 Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek, brought to you by Bridge. The fourth edition of the Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek starts here at Buffelsdrift Game Lodge, just outside Oudtshoorn in the Klein Karoo. It's a race with a difference, and the race defending champions are alongside me here. Kevin Evans and David George of Nedbank 360 Life. Kevin, last race of the year, slightly different. What are you expecting this year?
We're hoping we're not going to bump into any Ellies like what's standing behind us, but I mean, fantastic area, and I love racing in the Karoo, so happy to be here, and yeah, looking to try and defend our title from last year.
Short prologue of 15 kilometers, David, quite technical. You haven't yet had a look at it, but you have an idea what it's going to be like?
I can imagine if Matthijs Beekers has built it, it's going to be extremely technical and a lot of fun, but we're looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole week is just a fantastic environment, and what a way to finish the season off.
The 7-day race over 530 kilometres incorporates a prologue and 6 stages, and the spectacular trails, backcountry roads and some of the biggest passes in the land has attracted most of the top teams in the country and a number of international entrants. After 3 years, the race has taken on a fresh new look and feel, both on the course and in the shape of the passionate new title sponsor, whose CEO, Emil Aldum, decided to back the race after riding it last year. While the stages are a little shorter than previous editions, the harsh, rough terrain and summer heat of the Southern Cape will test the riders as they stay on their bikes all the way. Stage 1 starts in the ostrich capital of the world and the Klein Karoo, Oudtshoorn. Flanked by the Outeniqua Mountains to the west and the Swartberg Mountains to the east, the riders head west through Laatgansvlei onto Buffelskloof towards the redstone formations of Kruisrivier. Sweet single track will be interspersed with jeep track as they flow through the Beesemkop Reserve onto the Grootfontein Dam and the finish in the port capital of the world, Calitzdorp. On stage 2, the riders leave Calitzdorp and head north, where the farmlands that line the foothills of the majestic Swartberg range will keep them busy before they hit the day's highlight, the flowing purpose-cut single track at Limerick. The smiles will soon turn to determined grimaces as the riders begin Swartberg Showdown, a monster 1,100 metres of climbing over 12 kilometres that will test the months of preparation. The sharp-end racers will be fighting it out for the biggest stage prize in South African cycling history. First team to the top of Swartberg pockets a whopping 100,000 rand. After a night's rest in beautiful Prince Albert, the race heads to the southern sections of the Great Karoo, where the notion that the Karoo is flat will be well and truly laid to rest as they tackle typical Karoo tafelkoppies. A winding remote path will lead them through the village of Klaastroom. An 8k section of single track takes the field into a true Karoo wonderwerk, Meyringspoort, and an easy ride into the overnight camp at the warm and welcoming village of De Rust. Stage 4 may be short in distance, but it holds the potential for being one of the most memorable of the race. A steadily rising 25k climb takes them into the most desolate and scenic valley imaginable, the Kamanassi, with its awe-inspiring cliffs. But the reward of the views forever is hard-earned over rough, rocky terrain and leg-burning climbs. Nestled far below is the gateway to the coast, Louvain Guest Farm, where tired legs and aching muscles will be restored with typical Platteland hospitality. The fifth stage, from Herald to George, starts with a northerly ride along the lower slopes of the Outeniqua Mountains. Along the way, the terrain changes from arid, dry semi-desert to lush mountain forests. The climb up the aptly named Davelkorp looms early. Once on top, the traverse along the ridge will give the riders a first glimpse of the Indian Ocean. A fast jeep track descent into the coastal plateau flows westward, with a 10-kilometre single-track feast guaranteed to put smiles on tired faces before the roll into the finish in the capital of the Southern Cape, George. This might be the last stage of the race, but riders will do well not to let their guard down. The route back to Oudtshoorn knows only one way, and that's up. The first 18 kilometers to the summit of the Montague Pass, from where, like horses heading for home, the riders will pick up speed. The delights of the Jeep and single track on the Chandelier Game and Ostrich Farm will keep the adrenaline flowing before the cheering crowds in Oudtshoorn welcome the riders back after a sensational 7 days riding. They can be justifiably proud of completing an incredible race. In a break with tradition, the 4th edition of the Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek started with a Prologue time trial. The trails lovingly sculpted over the last 4 years by top local rider and former South African cross-country champion Matthijs Beukes provided an ideal pipe opener. This was terrain ideal for mountain biking. It's the ostrich capital of South Africa with a rich and strong tradition of true platteland hospitality. All that was evident at Buffelsdrift, registration and start and finish venue for the prologue of the 2012 Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek. Those riders who'd been able to get here a day early were able to enjoy the luxury of having a training ride around the 15 kilometers of superb single track that made up this tough prologue. Others were taking it on for the first time. The solo riders were first to leave the start hut, followed by the teams. Dry, loose and rocky. This was going to be a treacherous race. And none of these teams wanted to lose it all on day one. Years in the making, these trails lovingly crafted by Matthijs Beukes and thoroughly enjoyed by all the riders on day one. At just 15 kilometers and with 310 meters of climbing, this was not a really tough start, but it was an ideal way to settle the nerves and get the legs rolling ahead of another 6 days of very tough riding through the Klein Karoo. Plenty of short, sharp hills to get those legs pumping. The dedicated, passionate amateurs who commit hours and hours of busy working weeks to training for events like this had the first use of the prologue course. And then it was the turn of the man who put his name and his company behind this event after riding it last year. CEO of Bridge, Emil Laldum, set off on his own. Leading German pair, Max Friedrich and Nadine Rieder, major contenders for the mixed category. This is a scratch combination. Max, a 6-time former German marathon champion and the current Masters marathon champion of his country. And Nadine Rieder, a young rider with great potential. She's the current European Under-23 cross-country silver medalist and was 24th in the cross-country World Championships. And this was Nadine's first visit to South Africa, and the Ergon 24-hour racing team dealt with the extreme heat and the very tricky nature of the course very impressively, posting a time of 42 minutes and 27 seconds. The team chasing them were the BH High Bike Tigers, Catherine Sturnemann and Sandra Sonchen from Switzerland. Both had been out here before, and they've been riding together for 2 years. Sandra is a graphic designer, not a full-time rider, unlike Catherine, who's a very fine full-time rider, 28th in the World Cup standings this year. They put together a ride that saw them clock 43 minutes and 7 seconds, just 1 minute and 24 seconds behind Friedrich and Rieder, and the BH High Bike Tigers in second place. Two of the most experienced and wily competitors on the mountain bike scene in South Africa have teamed up to make up the Klein Karoo Chicks. They are Jolande Speedy and Jolandi de Villiers from Oudtshoorn. Jolande Speedy, fresh from finishing 14th at the Marathon World Championships in France last week. They are experienced but a relatively untried combination in stage racing. But they are going to be contenders, and they're going to have to push this pair, the defending champions, Catherine Williamson of Great Britain and her partner from George Ishen Stopforth. Second in the Transalp this year, Catherine had endured quite a journey to get here. Having landed in Johannesburg on Saturday morning, she was to drive down to Oudtshoorn. Her car broke down and she had to catch a Greyhound bus to get here. They did enough to take the day today. Sarah van Heerden and Jackie Church of Wild 2 finished in 3rd place in the ladies. The Masters pair of Robert Sim and Nico Fitzenmeyer, hugely competitive. This pair trying to make amends for the disappointments earlier this year in the major stage race, the Absa Cape Epic. There, a major accident on the 6th day cost them victory in the Masters category. This time they're racing in the Open category and they will be formidable contenders. A strict training and diet regime has made them very, very dangerous at the sharp end of the race. And their time at the finish of 38 minutes and 57 seconds of the first sub 39 minute ride, and illustrating that they will be dangerous throughout the week. The Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek has grown in popularity not only in South Africa but globally, and teams have arrived from all over the world. 2 Dutch combinations, Cube Nutswerk 1 and Cube Nutswerk 2, are amongst those competing inside the top 20 against the best South Africa can produce, and Contigo 28E's Louis Brester-Knipe and Craig Boys was certainly amongst those names, as were Iko Skutter and Jaco Ferreira, Bridge Ultimate Cycling Neisner. However, the unpredictable nature of mountain biking came back to bite them. Jaco, more at home on the road and flat open dirt roads, found the tricky technical nature of the course hard to deal with, and they lost almost 10 minutes to the leaders. At the other end of the skills spectrum, Chris Volata and Oliver Minnick, 2 young men from the Cape who just love the single track. And this track, built by one of the most skillful riders in the country, Matthijs Bierkes, and they were able to make it work for them. Oliver and Chris posting a time of 39 minutes and 51 seconds. The powerhouse Brester-Knipe and Craig Boys may find the open roads more to their liking, but they certainly are competitive on the tight, twisty and technical Prologue course, posting 38 minutes and 43 seconds. Starting 2 minutes behind the Contigo 28E pair were the man responsible for this very trail, Matthijs Bierkes, and his partner Ben Melt Swanepoel. They teamed up to form KangoMTB.com. Matthijs' parents had bought this land 10 years ago and slowly but surely developed it into an eco-friendly lodge. Matthijs prevailed upon his parents to build this trail, and it has evolved into one of the finest in the country. And no one knows it better than Matthijs, and Ben Melt Swanepoel having to do his utmost to stay in touch with his partner. This pair had ridden successfully in the United States in the Ultra Marathon Series this winter and had formed a great friendship and bond, thus their partnership here, and they posted time at 37 minutes and 32 seconds. Second out of the start hut from Nelspruit, the Westphal Columbia pair of Javi Combrink and Nico Bell. Nico fresh back from the World Championships in France last week, and they, like a number of the riders in the race, had ridden upcountry in Paris the day before. Nico and Javi chose to drive through from Johannesburg, arriving in Oudtshoorn at midnight. Quick morning recce had them smiling, as did their time at the end of the Prologue, 38 minutes and 54 seconds. The last team to leave the start hut, that of the defending race champions, Nedbank 360 Life's Kevin Evans and David George, and how they enjoyed this trail. Another team who back from the World Championships. This was vastly different to the mudfest that was taking place in France a week ago. Dry but beautifully succulent, and good trail manners there. The rider ahead of them just moving out the way in time to let Evans and George snake through. They were in blistering form on this trail, an illustration of just how good this MTB trail is. George, as ever, holding on to Evans's line as they chased for home. The time to beat was 37 minutes and 32 seconds. Rounding the dam, the finish in sight at Buffelsdrift, they had put together an awesome ride to clock 37.08, 24 seconds ahead of the second place team of Bierkes and Swanepoel. They have set the pace. The Prologue has set the tone for an incredible week, because this was sensational riding. Stopforth and Williamson by just 3 seconds over De Villiers and Speedy. That is going to be a cracking race. Friedrich and Riedler dominating the all-European top 3 in the mixed category. Stage 1 takes us 103 kilometers in the shadow of the massive Swartberg Mountains, from the capital of the ostrich industry to the port capital of South Africa, Calitzdorp. What a day. The 2012 Bridge Cape Pioneer Trek, brought to you by Bridge.